I'll start on our side here. I'll introduce myself. And Cyril, obviously, the floor will be yours. I'll give it to you. You will introduce yourself, introduce the Regtech Association. Okay. And then we'll go through your presentation. And then we'll end up by asking you, obviously, some questions and driving the conversation from there. Sounds good?
I think so.
Perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Hamid Barry for the people that do not know me, but I believe most of you guys already do. I'm the CEO and founder of Skaletek. In one sentence, if you may, we are an all-in-one compliance solution. We provide automated KYC, risk assessment, AML screening, and transaction monitoring. Okay, we're working towards reporting. It's a work in progress. It's not done yet, but yeah, we believe we building the greatest or best RegTech platform in Africa. Cyril, and yeah, we mostly focus in Africa and believe in doing big things within the next few years. Okay, so yeah, at a very high level, that's Skaletek. We are an AI-driven compliance solution providers. Okay, I'll leave the floor to you, Cyril, and let you introduce us to the Regtech Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamid, and it's a pleasure to be part of this very very important, initiative, right? So my name is Cyril Okorigwe. I'm the CEO, the lead at the Regtech Africa. Regtech Africa is building the largest Regtech ecosystem across Africa, and we are committed to leading this change by basically telling our stories and changing the narrative. We believe strongly in the transformative power of innovative regulation, and we believe that the Regtech Africa provides the platform, right, to drive the change. That's an ambitious goal for us, but we are very, very much committed to it because we believe that through this important initiative, the digital transformation of Africa will actually be realized. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Obviously, we believe in that vision, and obviously that's why we have you here. We are happy to have you, and looking forward to the next 45 minutes and learning these great challenges and how to overcome them in the RegTech space. Okay. Thanks again, and the floor is back to you. Zainab, you can present for Cyril.
All right, so thank you, Hamid. Thank you once again. I've decided to put this in the form of a presentation to actually capture to do justice to the topic, which is compliance challenges for businesses and how to overcome them. Right. It's a brief presentation, and I believe that with this, we're able to, drive the conversation and hopefully provide insights and clarity to any possible questions that that might come up. So, compliance challenges for businesses and how to overcome them. Right. So, businesses obviously have a strong role to play when it comes to compliance, and typically that is being demonstrated every now and then. Of course, as you know, in today's highly regulated environment, compliance is critical, right? And organizations have a responsibility to adhere in order to ensure safekeeping and maintenance of trust, which is at the heart of compliance. However, as lofty as this all looks, challenge is that the landscape can be very daunting because, of course, for obvious reasons. And that is where businesses struggle. And this is more particular for startup businesses that don't have resources, don't have so many things going for them. Now, in terms of the challenges, there are a number of them. I've highlighted a few just for the discussion. The first one I talked about there is lack of resources. Obviously, it's a common challenge for businesses, especially startups, right? And compliance requires dedicated resources in terms of time, money, personnel, and all of that, right? So businesses often struggle with compliance issues as they lack the resources to hire, dedicated compliance officers and also invest in compliance software. However, to overcome this, we recommend that businesses can prioritize compliance and also invest in cost-effective solutions, such as, cloud-based compliance solutions that, you can share the cost, right? In terms of complexity of regulation, that's another one. That's another challenge we see for businesses, right? It's a major one as well because regulation can be complex and it also can be dynamic, right? So businesses may not have all the expertise to understand them fully because of their very nature, and this can lead to non-compliant and sometimes legal penalties, right? To overcome this, we believe that businesses can seek help of compliance consultants who have better understanding and more in-depth knowledge of these intricacies, right? Or invest in compliance softwares that can help, to simplify some of these regulatory processes. We also highlighted changing regulation, which is closely related to the previous one. Regulations are not static, like I mentioned earlier on, and they change very frequently. So this can make it challenging for businesses to keep up, with the changes, right? To overcome this challenge, businesses should have a dedicated compliance team that stays up to date with regulatory changes. They can also invest in compliance software that can alert them of any changes and help them to stay compliant. So this basically is also very important when it comes to businesses, investing in their team, helping them to be more more knowledgeable in terms of the changing landscape. Inadequate compliance infrastructure is also another challenge, right? And the lack of inadequate infrastructure can actually be one challenge that is often overlooked. And when we say inadequate infrastructure, basically we are referring to policies, procedures, and systems put in place to ensure that businesses adhere to set regulations and rules, right? So when these are not adequate, it can lead to compliance breaches, and this can also have severe consequences or implications for the business. So as a way of overcoming this, the businesses can invest. As a matter of fact, not just can, businesses must invest in robust compliance infrastructure, right? Where cost is an issue, this can be approached from a shared cost perspective, where businesses can, where the cost of investment can be shared across different planes. So this includes implementing policies and procedures that align with regulatory requirements, deploying compliance monitoring solutions, and hiring compliance officers to oversee the compliance operations. Right. So these are basically steps that can be taken to overcome that challenge. Now, the fifth one, lack of knowledge and understanding of regulations. Most times, we don't seem to realize this, but one of the most significant challenges businesses face is the lack of knowledge and understanding of the regulations governing their operations. And when we say lack of knowledge, I mean, basically, not every business has that in-depth knowledge of how regulation and compliance really affect some of the decisions, some of the activities that they embark in, right? So compliance regulations are constantly evolving, like I mentioned, and businesses must keep up with these changes to remain compliant. So failure to do this can actually lead to severe consequences, not just financially, it could also be reputational damage. So to overcome this, we propose that businesses must invest in training and education to enhance their understanding of the regulatory landscape in the business that they operate. This can also be achieved through attending, of course, events, seminars, conferences, workshops, and all of that to help them to be abreast with these rapid changes and the trends within the space. Lack of communication is also another major one, right? And compliance requires collaboration to work. So it means different departments, different units, different directorates, different teams, regardless of wherever they are located or where they are working from, have to collaborate in some way for compliance to be very effective. So where this doesn't happen, it becomes a problem. So they have to collaborate and communicate between themselves. However, lack of communication can lead to non-compliance. So to overcome this, businesses should establish clear communication channels, right? And ensure that all departments are aware of their compliance obligations. They can also invest in compliance software, right? Cost-effective compliance software that can facilitate communication and collaboration. The next challenge highlighted is cybersecurity risk. Cybersecurity risks are a significant challenge for businesses, particularly in the digital age, right? As we do know, the digital age has changed a lot. There's been so much paradigm shift, right, with the digital age. And that has significantly also led to, the attendant threats that come with it, right? So cybersecurity has become critical in that aspect, right? So cyber attacks can lead to the loss of sensitive data and expose businesses to regulatory breaches. So businesses must therefore take proactive measures to mitigate these risks as they occur. To overcome this, we believe that businesses must implement robust cyber security measures, including deploying firewalls, using strong passwords, and implementing two-factor authentication. So businesses must also invest in cybersecurity training to educate their staff on the best practices of mitigating cybersecurity risks. So this is where training becomes really, really important, because cybersecurity is an emerging trend, is an emerging field. It also means that from within, right, there has to be enough talent pool and skill set to be able to mitigate this emerging threat as they occur. Data privacy and protection is another challenge. And data privacy and protection, they are very critical to compliance for businesses. Businesses must ensure that they collect, use, and store data in compliance with relevant regulations, such as the GDPR, which is, the globally known regulation. Different jurisdictions have their versions of the GDPR and other local regulations, right? So in Nigeria, for instance, we've got the NDPR, which is an adaptation of the GDPR. So it's important that businesses understand these regulations and are able to ensure that data privacy and protection is in line with these regulations. And to overcome this challenge, we advise that businesses must implement robust data privacy and protection policies and procedures. So this will include obtaining consent from data subjects, implementing appropriate security measures to protect data, and ensuring that data is only used for legitimate purposes. The next challenge highlighted there is non-compliance culture. Now, this is what you get over a period of time when compliance is not taken very seriously, is not at the forefront of an organization or a business, right? So the businesses that do not prioritize compliance may develop a non-compliance culture where employees do not take compliance seriously. And this can lead to a whole lot of issues. So to overcome this, we recommend that businesses should establish compliance culture that emphasize the importance of compliance. They must also invest in compliance training for their employees to increase their awareness of compliance obligations. Right. Now, the next one I highlighted there is aligning remote or distributed teams. So this is coming on the back of what has happened in recent times, where remote work has become the norm, right? And into the future, this will even be more prominent. So there will be businesses with teams working from different locations. And this obviously also has compliance implications, right? So one of the ways to overcome this would be to implement a centralized digital solution that will be able to, properly coordinate the different teams, right? Regardless of your physical location, right? This way, information can be administered from a central location, ensuring that everyone receives the same from a single source of truth. So it doesn't really matter where you are. There is a proper coordination in terms of the information that is being disseminated across the various locations where the teams exist. Cross-platform compatible systems are the best for this kind of system, because they guarantee that everyone is on the same plane, right? Regardless of what technology solution that has been deployed on a different location. So, for instance, where you have businesses that span jurisdiction, and you've got different solutions or different technology at the various locations. So when you have a cross-platform solution, it helps to resolve this, disparity, and everyone is essentially getting the same information and from a central point, and the outcome is also happening at the same time without any delay or confusion. Right. The next challenge highlighted there is reporting and auditing. And this goes without saying, really. Auditing and reporting are central to compliance, right? So the default go-to usually, especially for startups, right, is a spreadsheet, as we've seen, right? But as things scale, as your operations get bigger, right, that can become a challenge, because a spreadsheet may not longer be able to serve that purpose. So pulling data for specific queries can also become a challenge at that point, right? So how do you overcome this challenge, right? So the key to mastering audits and reports is to refine how you are logging and organizing your data. That's the key. So in an ideal world, you should be able to pull reports for different combinations and queries, whether that be team specific, information specific, or time specific. It doesn't matter, right? So that is what's reporting, and that's how you can mitigate the reporting and audit challenge. So there are two shortcuts, right, for this. Yeah, there are two shortcuts. This will either require manpower or a software alternative. So where you have to collate a lot of data, is either you've got enough manpower to be able to do that manually, or you've got a solution, a software solution that helps to automate that process, right? So the downside to the manpower resources, of course, obviously, it comes with so much cost. It comes with so much time, right? But beyond the time and the cost, right, there is also the issue of making mistakes, because humans are prone to errors, right? So that is why a software solution that can help to automate the process is will be highly recommended. The next challenge is sorry, just 1 minute. Next slide, please. Yeah. No, the previous one. Yeah, version control. So version control is also very important, especially for small and mid-sized businesses, right? The way you handle your different documents. So daily handling of numerous documents by an average worker increases the risk of documents going missing, being stored incorrectly, or even being recreated because they are lost in the network, right? So these are, come to think about it, where there are so many of this information, right? You really don't want you really don't want to have them in all scattered in a way that there is no control. So what version control really does is it helps to bring some sort of sanity, and organization around your different documents, your policies, procedures, guidelines, and everything within that organization. So for example, someone updates an important policy, saves it locally on their device, distributes it to staff, but fails to update the original on the shared network, leaving the other admins with an outdated copy. This happens a lot. We see this a lot, right? So where there is a proper versioning, a version control process, this helps to identify and tag, documents specifically, so that regardless, you are able to, at every point in time, identify a document that is relevant, that is still very current, from an outdated one that is no longer being in use. And then you can be rest assured that within the enterprise, within the organization, is the same document that everyone is using. Everyone is serving as a guide for everyone, not where you have different documents flying around the place and then causing so much confusion. And then, of course, that obviously would lead to a case of non-compliance. So to overcome this, establish a single source of truth, which is the central hub, where the latest copies are uploaded and distributed from. Additionally, set renewal dates for any document that might need refreshing in a certain time frame. This way, you can cross-reference what has been sent when the next renewal is, and confirm if the document you have is either up to date or outdated. So basically, this helps, right? Especially where you have lots of this kind of information, within the system. So you really want to have a structured way that the information is circulated and disseminated. Next slide, please. The right communication channel. So the right communication channel is often overlooked. Is often overlooked as a challenge in compliance, but seen sometimes as a means to an end, right? But it is also very important. Where you have emails and paperwork, they can result in missed messages and misunderstanding or delays. And these are possible outcomes where you have paperwork, emails as the only channel of communication, right? Especially when we're talking about communication now, we're talking about very sensitive information where you need to share very sensitive information. How do you manage that process? So these traditional channels may lead to all sorts of issues across the team, right? So what we see as a possible outcome here, or a possible way to overcome this here, is to centralize all your important communications by implementing a robust process that enables management, creation, sending, and tracking of all important documents from one place. So centralizing with a software solution, for example, would allow you to keep contact information, document distribution, and tracking in all the places, right? So this, as much as it's really not paid so much attention to, but it's one key channel that could actually cause, especially for small businesses, that could cause a major compliance breakdown. Next slide, please. Right, so having looked at some of these, These are not exhaustive, the challenges we looked at. There are still some more, depending on the kind of the size of the business, the nature, and the operations, right? There are so many other challenges that a business can face. And as it is developed, or as it evolves from startup to scale up, and then, to a conglomerate, so to speak. So these are different. There are a lot more, but I've highlighted this because for startups particularly, I see some of the challenges that we've highlighted that applies to startups mainly, right? So speaking broadly from a strategic point of view in terms of how to overcome compliance challenges, we've highlighted five key strategies for organizations, right? Medium, small, medium, and large size businesses. The first one there is develop a compliance management system, right? So again, this cannot be overemphasized. Businesses should be intentional about compliance. Compliance has become a critical aspect of business. It's no longer an afterthought, right? It is a key component of a business strategy, infused into the business overall goal and objective, right? So as part of setting up the framework, a proper compliance management system has to be taught right from the design point. So this is, wired into the core of the business, from the very top, to the list, right? And that is where, when you talk about attaining or having a culture of compliance, that's where it comes from. Because over time, it will then transcend to become a culture where the business itself and the staff, the personnel, all share in that common vision, and they understand the implication, and they are all working towards, achieving the broader objective of it, right? So that's the first recommendation in terms of strategy. The second is invest in compliance training. Again, this also comes, it goes without saying, right? If the team from within are not knowledgeable enough, there is obviously going to continue to be a problem, because compliance, like I mentioned earlier, is dynamic. It's not static. And because it is dynamic in nature, you need to continuously, upskill, train, and train. So investment in training, and it's an investment. It's an investment in training, right? So because compliance is an enabler for the business, investing in it also helps to make the business look good. It also helps to make the business beyond just financial profitability. There's a reputational side to it. There's a whole lot of trust and confidence that the stakeholders would have in the business. So all of this translate to intangible assets or value that the business ultimately would get, right? The third one there is engage with regulatory bodies. And clearly this is one area that startups struggle, right? Especially if the regulatory landscape is not skewed towards their favor, right? But it's important for businesses to identify possible avenues to engage with the regulatory authorities, because by so doing, the regulatory authorities would, have better understanding about, their own pain points, and have better appreciation on how to assist them. The same way, they will also understand or have better insights into the regulators' perspective in terms of what are the key things the regulators are looking out for and how they can align their own requirements or their own model in that respect. I know for a fact that in a number of countries, the regulators are trying to bridge this gap, by setting up initiatives like the regulatory sandboxes and all of that, right? What that does is it helps the regulator from a first-hand perspective, right, to have clear insights into what the businesses are building, and also to help them to identify those risks that may be associated with their solutions and all of that. And this way, it provides the businesses some sort of level playing field, right, to have access, to the regulatory process, whatever is in place and has been set in place. So that is a very important strategy. The fourth one is conduct regular compliance audits. I mean, we cannot say this enough, because audit is always a going concern, right? So it's not basically done like a transaction, one-off. No, it's a going concern. So once you conduct an audit, right, you take necessary steps in terms of the lessons learned from that process, take necessary steps to enhance the results in terms of the feedback, and then conduct a fresh one after a period of time. I think typically, depending, right, but 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but whatever it is, whatever cycle it is, it should be an ongoing process to help mature or improve the maturity level of your compliance, your internal compliance process. Because through regular audits, you're learning your mistakes and you're taking steps to correct them, and by so doing, you're also getting better and becoming more matured in the entire process. The last strategy that we highlighted there is utilize technology. Of course, from all the challenges and the ways to overcome them that we read, it's very clear that technology has an important role to play in enhancing compliance and helping businesses to overcome the challenges, right? So technology, in whichever way, shape, form, comes very handy. And the good thing is technology is becoming much, more available by the day, right? It's becoming more available by the day for all types of businesses, small, medium, and large businesses, to deploy to their own advantage, right? There are a lot of cloud-based solutions, right, that have shared cost model, if you like, right, that's conveniently fits into the budget of small businesses, right, and all of that. So for large enterprise businesses that have deep pockets, yes, they may want to go for something different, something, have an on-premise solution and all of that. Yeah. But the fact is, whichever option a business decides to go for in terms of deployment of technology, right, the result is what matters most, right? It makes your processes more efficient. It helps makes them faster. it ultimately helps you to reduce costs. It helps you because costs as a result of compliance breaches and all of that could be very, very significant. So you don't really want to not to pay attention to all of that. So technology tools can actually help a business, do a lot more in that regard. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, next slide. I think that should be the last, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
No,
13.
yeah. In conclusion, I'll just say that compliance is essential to safeguarding assets, and businesses face severe challenges in achieving compliance, right? However, businesses can overcome these challenges by prioritizing compliance, investing in cost-effective solutions, seeking help from compliance consultants, staying up to date with regulatory challenges, establishing clear communication channels, and promoting a compliance culture. So I'll say thank you on that note. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. A lot of information. Thank you so much. I mean, a lot of questions, but I believe most of them were answered during your presentation, right? A lot insightful. Learned a lot, obviously. I have few questions, but I will hold them back. I'll give the floor to the people that are present. For now, does anyone have any questions for Cyril before I go on to ask a few questions? All right, Cyril, I'll go on then and ask a few questions. So yeah, we covered the business side of things and how compliance could help resolve a lot of issues and the challenges that they can have, obviously, and how to overcome them, right? I want us now to go towards regulators a little bit. In Africa, we have 54 countries, and in those 54 countries, we have different regulations. The question here is, what can regulators across different countries in Africa do to harmonize regulations and reduce barriers for for companies in general? Yeah, that's the question in general, right? How can we standardize those regulations to facilitate the cross-border regulations across Africa?
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's a very brilliant question and a very important question also, because regulation is a very, very important aspect of the compliance process itself. And when a business, begins and grows beyond a specific jurisdiction, right? So the issue of cross-border compliance then comes in, right? And that is where the discussion around having the regulators, streamline compliance processes becomes, even more important. Now, in my view, there's a whole lot that can be done, right? In opening up the space. Obviously, 54 countries across Africa. Each country has got their own specific regulation, right? So it means as a business, if you're looking to trade, right, between these countries, as you move from one country to the other, you realize that, you know, the regulation also changes. Now, that becomes a very major bottleneck, you know, for not just for you as an individual, but even for the business as well, right? And like I was discussing with someone the other day, India as a country has a population of about 1.3 billion people. Africa as a whole has got a population of about 1.3, 1.4 billion as well. Now, if you're doing business in India, it's just one regulation, right? And you have access to 1.3 billion people, right? If it's in Africa, you're dealing with 54 regulations to have access to the same 1.3 billion people, right? So it becomes very very, you know, frustrating and all of that. Now, what I see clearly is the evolution we are seeing in line with digitization is going to change a whole lot of this dramatically, right? The ongoing conversation around the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, which is at the core of the Africa Free Trade, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement or area, right? So these are two initiatives I see that would drive this change, right? Maybe still at the early stage at the moment, but in order to effectively transact across the region using one payment and settlement platform, right? And in order to be able to trade without restriction across the continent, a lot of things have to change. And one of those things that will change will be the regulatory, harmonizing the regulatory frameworks across different countries. I'm aware that currently countries are already looking in those directions. There are already discussions around, you know, harmonization in some way, even though at the early stage. But by the time the free trade area picks up fully and the payment and settlement system also takes full shape, the harmonization of regulation will be one of those key instruments that will drive this change, right? Absolutely. So obviously, it may be still early. I mean, back to your question, it may be still too early at this point, but emerging technologies, digitization, and some of the initiatives that, you know, the countries are taking, the nations are taking, right, are going to be the key things that would ultimately, you know, change the dynamics. And that is where partnership and collaboration also becomes very important, right? If Africa as a bloc decides to put everything behind and look at the ultimate benefits of, you know, taking full business advantage of the 1.3 billion population, right, to their own advantage, right? Because that's a very strong block for Africa to really play at the global scale, at the global level, right? So if Africa can come together collaboratively, right, and see the bigger picture, right, the regulatory impediments would be a thing of the past, because they will all be harmonized to achieve that broader objective. And I think that is possible.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much for the response and the details behind it. And we'll pray for a standardization of our regulations in Africa. And I believe great steps are being taken by these countries, obviously, as you said, to help us get there. And hopefully we'll get there soon with everything that are being done and the advancement of technology, obviously. Now we have a question on the chat. I'll read it for you. I think it says, what are some common regulatory challenges notable African organizations have faced over the years?
Common regulatory challenges notable African organizations have faced over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so again, flowing from my presentation, it depends on a number of factors: the size of the organization, the scale, the sector, and all of that. But from what we see, they all cut across, really. They cut across. So notable African organizations, and when you say notable, I don't know. That doesn't give me an idea of the size of the organization. But if you're talking about common regulatory challenges we find in Africa, they are obviously all the 15 or so that I talked about.
More.
They are all common regulatory challenges. All of them.
Absolutely.
All of them. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Now I have another question to follow up on the question that I had before. Still on the regulators. In an environment where regulations often lag behind basically the technology as we know, what steps can regulators take to be more proactive in shaping policies to support startups and businesses in the innovation side of things, while also ensuring a robust compliance frameworks? Finding the trade-off there seems to be a little bit hard, right? How can that be done by the regulators? Obviously, how can the regulators help us there?
Yeah, I think the regulators basically would have to take the leadership, have to take a leadership role in changing the dynamics, right? The technology innovation has always taken the lead, and what we see in some markets is the regulator encourage that, right? So innovation takes the lead, and the regulator embrace it and encourage it, and then you see a good outcome in some cases. However, in some other jurisdiction or in some other markets, we've also seen where innovation takes the lead and regulation kind of stifles that position, thereby slowing down slowing down innovation in that regard. However, increasingly regulators are beginning to understand that the overall trend, right, globally, is being led by innovation, right? And increasingly they are opening up to embracing innovation, which is why I talked about the regulatory sandbox earlier on. A lot of countries are actually encouraging that, working closely with innovators and other stakeholders, right, to test and understand better, right, these solutions, understand the risks, understand how the value in it and all of that, so that the solutions can actually go mainstream without causing any problem, right? Because for the regulator, really, essentially, I think we need to understand this. The regulator's intention, it's not necessarily to stifle or to discourage the business. That's not their intention, right? And we need to know this, right? The intention of the regulator is to safeguard, right, and to protect, right, the investment public, and the consumers in some cases, right? So that is, and to ensure that there is also some sort of stability, within the ecosystem. That's all the regulator is interested in. But of course, obviously, in doing this, they also have to be on the lookout for inherent risks that could cause problems within the system. And when they identify such risks, they try to obviously, put some controls to mitigate against, those risks, right? So where there is a proper framework in terms of having a proper way of identifying innovative ideas that will not cause problems to existing, system, right? The regulator is very much happy, more than happy, to integrate that, and that's what the sandbox initiative basically tries to address, in a systematically way, identify very good innovations, be able to access the risks within it, and or then decide to either accept or not at the end of the day. So that is where that comes in. So regulators, obviously, I see them, opening up even more, and at some point taking the lead. But to take the lead, they also have to do more, because capacity building we talked about earlier on, it's not just for the businesses, it also applies to the regulators, right? So because the more capacity the regulator builds, the more knowledgeable they become, and the more they can also do in terms of being proactive, right? So I think with more investment in capacity development and all of that, right, the regulators would take frontline position in this game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant. I share exactly the same belief as you. Regulators are not should not be seen as basically police officers. They should be seen as the first line of defense for companies, startups. And I think we should actually convey that message more, educate people more to understand why they are there. Is truly to help them grow faster, and having that defense side of things well set up before actually scaling up. That should be the true message there. And now, the more people understand this, the more they will go towards the regulators, and and that sandbox obviously idea that some of these countries are doing. I know it's a brilliant idea. And I think it's gonna help drive innovation, and obviously it's gonna foster that collaboration between the regulators and well, the entrepreneurs or the innovators of these companies, right? Pushing people to like innovate more and create new things. So yeah, it's very encouraging. And, I believe we just need to educate ourselves a lot more, understand this, that the regulations, understand the regulators while they are there, and from there, like try to like build our business with the base, what that I think is the most important thing, the compliance side. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know this or lack the knowledge of understanding this, because as entrepreneurs or as founders, you have the tendency of thinking the business first, and the business is like where I can get more revenue. We forget about the most important things, which is how can I secure the business, basically, right? Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Cyril. I don't know if anybody else have any questions, but I have been good. If anybody else, I'll wait here a little bit and see if I'll pause you and see if anybody else have any questions. I know you are past or not. we are 4 minutes out of time, but does anybody else have any questions for Cyril before we let Cyril give his closing thought? Going once, going twice. All right. Cyril, thanks again. Thank you so much for your time. This is brilliant and a lot of information, and we appreciate your time a lot. I'll let you give your closing thought, and yeah, we'll catch up offline.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hamid. I would say that this is very, very good initiative that you're putting in place. I think the word has to be out there in terms of what people have to do at all level, businesses, individuals, and all of that to remain compliant, right? Because it is only when we spread the awareness, when we have these conversations like this, that we create more awareness, and then also that helps to build the same compliance culture that we talked about, right? The more people know, the better the space, because the more they know, the more they are able to take steps to ensure that they do the right thing, and then the more matured the compliance process becomes. So I think it's a good job you're doing, and I would just encourage that you keep it up.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate the great words. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I get